Hey there. It's me, Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the comment, thanks. On April 23rd, I found a letter from Carnegie Mellon University in the mail that had been forwarded by our post office at home. I had already been accepted at USC, but CMU was my first choice, and I nervously opened the letter and read it quickly. They were informing me that my grades were acceptable, but that I must come to the college for an interview as the second part of the process. I showed the letter to Mom, and we decided to talk to Mr. Bacon about clearing the day when I was scheduled to be at the college in Pennsylvania. Mr. Bacon agreed to shoot around me on the day of the interview, and Mom made arrangements for us to fly down to Pittsburgh. I worked extra hard to complete the scenes that I was in, so that I wouldn't be missed on the day that I was to be away. On the day of the interview, a private jet took us down to Pittsburgh, where a hired limo met us at the airport and took us to the campus. The driver was familiar with the campus and drove us to the building where the interview would be conducted without having to stop and ask for directions. We arrived about 2 hours early and checked in so that they'd know that we were there. We were asked to have a seat for a few minutes to wait for our student hostess. 5 minutes later, a girl about 2 years older than myself came rushing in. "Miss Ramsey, I'm Lana Troy. I'll be your student hostess today. I can't tell you what an honor it is to meet you. I've become a big fan of yours since I saw you in Open Spaces, Closed Hearts. I loved the book and the first movie. I certainly hope that you're going to make the rest of the story." As Lana finally paused to take a breath, I said, "Thank you, Lana. This is my mother. How do you do, Mrs. Ramsey? It's a pleasure to meet you also. You must be so proud of your daughter. She's one of the best actresses to come into the business in years. I can't believe that someone who hasn't had any formal training in acting can be so wonderful. It's a natural gift, that's what it is. I hope that I can someday be half the actress that she is. I study and work, but I don't come across as natural as she does, and without any training at all." "I've had training," I said, "even though I haven't been to college yet, Lana. Adam Tucker, the actor and director, has trained me. He's one of the best for my money. I don't think that I'm familiar with him. Does he teach in New York City?" "No, he's the director at the community theater in my hometown." "Oh. A community theater actor. How interesting." I smiled to myself at the unintentional put-down. "We have a couple of hours before the interview. We'd like to look around the campus." "Of course. That's what I'm here for. Come with me." With Lana as a guide, we received a tour of the Purnell Center for the Arts and many of the other nearby buildings on the campus. Mom hadn't insisted that I wear ultra-tight clothes today, but I still stood out on a campus where jeans and t-shirts appeared to be the prevalent form of clothing for both sexes. Lana was a good tour guide, as she knew the campus well and never stopped talking. In between describing points of interest, Lana quizzed me about my career. She had seen A Promise of Spring when it had come out, but hadn't paid particular attention to me. After seeing Open Spaces, she had rented a copy of A Promise of Spring and watched it again. She said that she couldn't believe that I was the same person in both movies. "In A Promise of Spring, you were such a lump. You were so totally different in Open Spaces." "I was playing a lump, as you call me, in A Promise. I was supposed to be an introverted young girl who had had a string of boyfriends that had abused her and destroyed her self-worth. In Open Spaces, I was playing an extroverted young shrew. You wouldn't expect the characters to be portrayed the same way, would you?" "No, I wouldn't. Well, that's what we do as actors. We become different people based on what the script calls for. If I looked the same in two totally different parts, I wouldn't be much of an actress. About 15 minutes before the appointment time, we left the snack bar and went back to the Purnell Center. We were welcomed to the school by the secretary of Mr. Keones, who was the head of the School of Drama, and escorted to a rehearsal hall where the interview would be conducted. Mom was invited to wait for me outside the hall. Lana stayed with her. Mr. Keones welcomed me and introduced each of the interviewers on the panel as soon as I was seated. He told me that most of them were familiar with my work, and while that was in my favor, they still had to determine that I was the right person for one of the only 6 available positions that were being filled in the directing curriculum. I had been on so many interviews over the past 2 years that my nervousness dissipated quickly as we started. They asked me about my goals and experiences, but most of all they wanted to make sure that I was sincere about attending the school and staying with the program. I assured them that CMU was my #1 choice, although I had been accepted elsewhere. I told them that if I were accepted here, I would inform the other schools immediately that I was declining their offers. Lastly, we talked about the new movie that I was currently engaged with. Since the directing curriculum required that each student take 2 years of acting instruction, one of the interviewers asked how I would feel about taking basic acting courses after having been a highly successful actress already. I was ready for that question and replied that I was sure that there was still a great deal that I could learn about the craft regardless of the course level. They seemed satisfied with the answer, and one of them suggested that I might be excused from some of the basic courses based on my previous experience. At the end of the interview, they said that they would get back to me as soon as a decision was reached. I requested that the decision be mailed to me at the movie location so that I wouldn't have to wait for it to be forwarded by the post office. Mr. Keones told me to leave the address with his secretary, and then I was excused. I thanked everyone and left. There was another candidate waiting outside in the hall with Mr. Keones' secretary. The secretary asked me to wait while she went inside to see if they were ready. When she came out, she told the other candidate to wait until called, and I followed her back to her office so that I could give her the temporary mailing address. With the interview complete, Mom, Lana, and I went outside. I thanked Lana for being our hostess for the visit and wished her luck with her career. She told me that it had been her honor to show us around and asked for my autograph. I wrote a very nice message in her autograph book about our afternoon together and signed it. We said goodbye, climbed into the limo, and returned to the airport. We had a 2-hour wait before the private jet would be ready for the return trip, so we settled down to talk and kill time. Naturally, the conversation centered on the interview as I told her everything that had happened. So how do you feel about how you did? Mom asked. I don't know. Everything went smoothly. There weren't any awkward silences. I think that I'm being seriously considered. You said that there's only 6 positions open? Actually, the literature says about 6 positions. I suppose that there could be 5 or 7 as well. And they didn't give you any sense of how they felt towards you. They seemed to like the idea that I was already in the business. Well, every school likes to brag about the success of their graduates. There wouldn't be any question about whether you'll be a success or not, since you're already established. Is that good? I was a success before I began classes here. Maybe they'd want to be able to say that the success was the result of their teaching. The important part is that you have the talent to succeed. No one will really remember that you were successful before you started college if they include your name with their honored alumni. We continued to discuss the school and the interview until they called that our plane was ready for boarding, and 2 hours later we were landing in Maine. Not expecting to hear anything from the college right away, I turned my attention fully back to the movie. The weather continued to improve as we moved into May, and the time came to begin shooting the riding scenes and the romantic scenes under the large scarlet maple that had actually been transplanted to the property where we were shooting. I was happily surprised on the day that the stunt woman arrived. The stunt woman hired to sub for me was none other than Sharon Oberson. I knew that she had been hired, and had even recommended her, but I hadn't known exactly what day she would be arriving. I was beside myself with happiness when I looked up and saw her standing there. I jumped up from my chair and hugged her. "Oh my God, Sharon, it's so great to see you. I've tried to get in touch with you every time I've gone to LA, but you're always away." She smiled widely. "It's great to see you too, honey. I've missed you. I'm glad to see that you're doing so well. I was excited when I was offered the job to stunt for you. Pull up a chair and tell me everything that you've been doing for the past year." For the rest of the day, Sharon was never very far away. She stood on the sidelines when I was in a scene, and we sat together and talked when I wasn't. The next 2 weeks were wonderful as Sharon and I spent all of our free time and meal times together. It hardly seemed like work when she was around. She even talked me into pulling several practical jokes on my fellow actors. Nobody got hurt or offended, and everyone seemed to have a good time, and the fun became infectious. On the last day of work for Sharon, she confided in me that this would be her last job for a while. She had just learned before coming to the location that she was pregnant. The father was her former boyfriend, Roy. They had worked together on her last picture, and after a little too much partying one night, they had slept together. She had stopped taking the pill because it was making her ill, and she wasn't having an affair with anyone anyway. It was the wrong time to get together with her ex. After Sharon left, I grew a little despondent for a few days. I guess that I got over it by throwing myself into my work. We were spending a lot of time shooting the romantic scenes under the scarlet maple tree now, and I seemed to spend most of my time in Greg's arms. The nicer weather had brought out the locals to watch the filming, so we often had an audience for the outdoor scenes, even if they were kept quite a ways back and had to watch with binoculars to get a good look. It was almost exactly 30 days after my interview at CMU that the letter arrived from Mr. Keones. He opened his remarks by thanking me for my interest in their college and curriculum, and then thanked me for coming for the interview. Then he said that he regretted that he must inform me that I was not selected for one of the 6 available positions in the directing program. I felt totally crushed, and I immediately felt tears forming in my eyes and running down my face. I had been counting on getting into the program more than I had realized. My grades were good enough, so I must have failed in the interview. Mom came out of the bedroom and saw me standing there crying just as I finished the letter. She came immediately over to me and said, "What is it, honey?" I sniffled and said, "A letter from CMU. They rejected me." Mom took the letter from my trembling hand and read it, then wrapped her arms around me. "It's okay, baby. It's only one school. You were accepted at the other 3. I broke down completely once Mom tried to comfort me, and I cried into her shoulder. She just stood there, held me, and tried to comfort me with words, but I was too wrapped up in my own thoughts and feelings of depression over failing to achieve something that I had really wanted. After a few minutes, Mom gently moved us over to the couch and we sat down together. She held me until I got the crying out of my system, and then got up to get a package of tissues. I took several from the box and dried my face and blew my nose as Mom patted at her soggy shoulder. "Feeling better now?" A good cry is very therapeutic. I nodded and spoke as I sniffled. I'm okay now, but I'm still sad about not getting into CMU. I thought that the interview went pretty well. I secretly thought that I was in. I had talked myself into believing that they would love to have a successful actress in their program. We may never know why you weren't accepted. Perhaps they don't really even know why they selected someone else over you. Try to find some comfort in the fact that there were only 6 positions to fill. The competition must have been incredible. They couldn't very well take everyone that applied. I know that you're terribly disappointed right now, but things will work out. Maybe we'll find out that it's all for the better. I sniffled out, I don't see how it could be for the better that I wasn't accepted. That's just one of those things that we only know when we look back. We don't always get everything that we want, and that's one of the things that's often for the better. It makes us better appreciate the things that we do get. You've been wonderfully successful with your acting. You've made it financially possible for you and your sister to get first-class education, plus accumulated enough to make you financially secure for many years. A few more years of work and proper investing will enable you to enjoy a modest lifestyle for the rest of your life. You'll be able to follow whatever career path you choose without worrying about financial considerations. Now go wash your face and we'll go to dinner. I'm not hungry. Then you won't order very much, but you still have to eat something. You only had a cup of yogurt for lunch and I don't want you getting sick. Now go clean up and get ready to go. I walked to my bathroom and looked at my face. My eyes were red and the area around them was puffy, but I washed up and fixed my makeup. I only picked at my dinner while Mom did her best to cheer me up, but a large disappointment can only be overcome by time. Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access. Link in the comment. Thanks.